Hey everyone, welcome to Cause of Cognizance, and today we're going to be watching a video by Sean Ryan, and he's interviewing Lee Strobel. And Mr. Strobel is somebody I look up to. I think he's very smart, um, and I think most people go through life without ever stopping to ask the biggest question of all, right? How did all of this get here? We spend so much time caught up in routines, screens, and noise that we forget to look up at a universe so impossibly precise that even one constant being off by a fraction would collapse everything we know. And yet, for some reason, the idea of a creator of intentional design is dismissed by some as if it's the least likely explanation. But think about it. I think if you think about it a bit, uh, the universe is fine tuned to an almost absurd degree. Not almost, it is an absurd degree. Consciousness exists, morality exists, mathematical laws don't just work, they hold up everywhere. Um, these aren't just small coincidences, in my opinion, they're patterns that point to purpose. But we rarely think deeply about it because depth makes us uncomfortable. It forces us to confront meaning, responsibility, and truth. It forces us to entertain the possibility that our lives are part of something far bigger than just random chance. To me, the existence of a creator isn't just possible, it's the most reasonable conclusion. Not because of blind faith, but because the evidence for design is everywhere if you're willing to step back and actually just take a look. In this video, I want to challenge the way you think, not to push a belief, but to invite a deeper conversation. Because if there is a creator, then that changes everything.
Let's move into Is God Real?
Yeah.
The book.
Yeah.
What is some of the evidence that really stood out to you?
Well,
Talk about DNA,
yeah.
the universe.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that really just stood out to you?
I think one of the most powerful discoveries of modern ages, this only goes back, 50 to 100 years, people used to think that the universe was eternal. It always existed. But now we know from a series of scientific discoveries and philosophical arguments from the last century or so that the universe had a beginning in the past. At some point in the past, the universe began to exist. In fact, the great cosmologist Alexander Vilenkin, him and two other cosmologists, cosmology just means the study of the origin of the universe, came up with a theorem that says that even if our universe turns out to be one small part of a multiverse, the multiverse itself must have had a beginning. So what does that mean, that the universe had a beginning? Well, it harkens back to an argument for the existence of God that's been popularized by my friend, a philosopher, Dr. William Lane Craig. It goes like this. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. We now know that the universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause behind it. Well, what kind of a cause can bring a universe into existence? Well, it must be transcendent, which means apart from creation. It must be immaterial or spirit because it existed before the physical world. It must be timeless or eternal because it existed before physical time came into being. It must be powerful given the immensity of the creation event. It must be smart given the incredible precision of the creation event. It must be personal because they had to make the decision to create. Must be caring because he so carefully crafted a habitat that we could exist in. And the scientific principle of Occam's razor tells us there would be just one creator. So that's a description of the God of the Bible, right there. Transcendent, immaterial or spirit, eternal, powerful, smart, personal, caring. It's a description of the God of the Bible. That discovery of the universe having a beginning, I think, is probably the single strongest argument from science that God must exist. The second area is physics, the fine-tuning of the universe. The universe is finely tuned on a razor's edge so that life can exist. In other words, the numbers that govern the operation of the universe, if you were to change them just slightly, life would be impossible. So in other words, if you go out on a summer night and look up at the sky, and instead of seeing a sky full of stars, you saw 50 to 100 giant dials in the sky. And each dial could be calibrated to one of trillions of possible settings. That is a picture of what modern physics tells us our universe is like. 50 to 100 of these dimensions of physics, it have to be perfectly calibrated so life can. I'll give you some examples. We all know what gravity is, right? Mm-hmm. If I drop my cell phone for the millionth time, if I drop this cell phone, it's going to hit the ground because of gravity. But gravity is finely tuned so that life can exist. How finely tuned? Picture a ruler across the entire known universe, 15 billion light years, and it's broken down in 1-inch increments. That ruler represents the range along which the force of gravity could have been calibrated anywhere along that ruler, but it happens to be at the exact right place so that life can exist. What if we changed it? Let's change the force of gravity 1 inch compared to 15 billion light year width of the universe. Intelligent life is impossible anywhere in the universe, just with that single change. My favorite example is the ratio between the electromagnetic force and the gravitational force. It has to be finely tuned to 1 part in 10,000 trillion. So how do we visualize that? That would be like taking a continent the size of North America and piling it with dimes to the moon. 238,000 miles of dimes, and then taking 1 billion continents, the size of North America, and piling them with dimes up to the moon, and then taking 1 dime and spray painting it red, and then mixing it among all the dimes in the billion continents going up 238,000 miles, and then I blindfold you. And I say, you can dig in among all these billion continents, the dimes all the way to the moon, but you can only reach in 1 time and pick out 1 dime. What are the odds you'd get the dime spray painted red? 1 chance in 10,000 trillion. So it shows you how astronomical the odds are against this. It cannot happen by chance. I interviewed one physicist and I said, what are the odds? These numbers are astronomical. What are the odds this could have just happened by chance? He said, oh, we physicists have a term for that. I said, oh, what is it? He said, ain't going to happen. The other area of science, and again, this is discoveries just within the last century for sure, maybe within the last 50, 80 years, is DNA. Your body has, 100 trillion cells in it. Open up any cell, and if you were to unravel the double helix of DNA from 1 cell, it would be 6 feet tall. Embedded in that DNA is a 4-letter chemical alphabet that spells out the precise assembly instructions for every protein out of which you're made. Just like English uses a 26-letter alphabet to spell out words, DNA uses this 4-letter chemical alphabet to spell out how to build you, how to build the proteins that make you. There are more words in 1 cell in your body than you would find in 200 years of the Sunday New York Times.
Wow.
Where does that come from? Nature cannot produce information. It can produce patterns. I live in Houston. If I go down to Galveston and the beach and the sand is wet from overnight and there's ripple marks in the sand, it would be logical for me to say the waves made those ripple marks in the sand because nature can make patterns. But if I'm walking down the beach and in the wet sand I see John loves Mary with a heart around it and an arrow through it, I wouldn't say, oh, the waves made that. Why? Because that's information. And without an exception, whenever we see information, whether it's a painting on a cave wall, whether it's a computer code, whether it's a novel, whenever we see information, there is always an intelligence behind it. Stephen Meyer, with a PhD from Cambridge University on origin of life, interviewed him for my book, Is God Real? And he looks at every alternative explanation. None of them hold water. The only explanation is there must be a creator who in a sense signed every cell in our body. He left behind instructions, written instructions, 4-letter chemical alphabet on how to build you. And I think you take those 3 areas of science together, cosmology, physics, biochemistry, they make a really strong case that God is real.
If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I'm starting this channel to dive into philosophy, Christianity, maybe some political topics. I plan to keep the clips short and sweet. And with this video, I wanted to kind of make people think about their initial assumptions about a creator. Because I know when I was an atheist for a long time, I sort of thought, there can't be a God. It's sort of all a fairy tale, like Santa Claus, right? That was kind of the youthful, naive thought process I had about it, and it wasn't until I decided to um, dive into the actual. It's like who was I to say that there was no God when I have done zero research, I've done zero footwork, I have not dived into any of the historical texts that make that these religions are grounded in, and it wasn't until I did those things that I actually came to believe that um, belief in a creator, right, like a like a painting implies a painter, a book implies an author. I now am under the assumption that there is a creator, a personal creator as well. Um, and with that, I'll leave you guys. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your night. And I'm out.